episode of Truth from the Trail. Today I'm at a place called Jump Off Rock. It is right outside of Hendersonville, North Carolina, literally about 15 miles from my house. And my wife and I drove out this afternoon, and it is a gorgeous day. There are people here. Jump Off Rock is a very popular place. There are some hiking trails around Jump Off Rock. We're at about 3,000 feet, and the hiking trails are short. Some of them are very steep, and they just kind of circle around this area. So they make for nice hiking, but it's a very popular tourist spot because of the view. Let me take a quick stop of what I was saying and show you the beauty of Jump Off Rock. I got out of the cave to let you see. On a clear day, you can see 4 states. Way back there in the distance behind me is Georgia, and then back in here is South Carolina, and I don't know that we can actually see Georgia. It's a little bit hazy today, but that right there is South Carolina. If I walk over here, obviously we're seeing up close, we're seeing North Carolina, but way over there is Tennessee. And so it's an amazing place. It is especially attractive at night. The late in the afternoon, when you catch a sunset from up here, it is beautiful. There are also some little trails you can do around the actual rock that open up into this little cave where I'm sitting trying to get away from the tourists. So you may hear voices and kids hollering and that kind of thing. Hopefully nobody will walk up on us. But this little cave is nice and secluded, literally under the rock, which is above me, a little to my right. I'm glad you joined us today. We're going to look at a story from the Bible that I believe it's a true story. Even if you don't, there's some great lessons in this story. We pick our story up with the life of Jesus and his disciples, and they're traveling throughout the land. In this particular story, they go way to the north of Israel, and the story picks up as they travel to a place called Caesarea Philippi. It's actually the region of Caesarea Philippi, not the actual city, but the region. And they stop, and they're having a time together where Jesus asks his disciples a couple of questions. He says, as they're talking, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And the disciples gave him different answers. They said, "Some say you're John the Baptist come back to life. Some say you're Elijah returned. Others say you're Jeremiah, and still others say you're some of the other prophets." And then Jesus asked, "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter stepped forward and said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus said, "Blessed are you, Simon Peter, because flesh and blood didn't tell you those things. That kind of information had to come from my Father. And it's upon that confession of faith that I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And I'll give you the keys to the kingdom, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And they left that place, and our story ends there. Very short story, but packed with information. We always look for life lessons. There's a lot of deep theology in this story, and there are also some very practical life lessons that I apply to my life, and maybe you can apply to your life. It's necessary. I don't do a lot of this, but it's necessary before we jump into that for me to give you just a little bit of biblical history on this area. Caesarea Philippi, as I said at the very beginning, was far to the north of Israel. It was really, I don't know what to call it other than a cesspool of morality. It was a pagan place, and had been for centuries. If you go way back to when you had one kingdom and it divided, and the southern kingdom was Judah and the northern kingdom was Israel. The first king of Israel was Jeroboam, and he had the city of Dan right here. It was there where he had built a golden calf and had the people to worship this calf, saying that it was God. Later, King Ahab and Jezebel, Queen Jezebel, lived in the city of Dan, and they started the whole thing of Baal worship, B-A-A-L. Baal was just a pagan worship, pagan rituals, very immoral, inhumane type things going on, and they had a whole plethora of little g gods and goddesses that went along with Baal worship. That's where it took place, was in this region. Decades, centuries later, the Greeks took over the area, and they had an area they called Paneas. They changed the name from Dan to Paneas. Paneas was in honor of the Greek god Pan, who was the god of the wild, god of sexuality, god of fertility. So you can imagine the kind of worship rituals they had in Paneas, especially right outside of Paneas, where the headwaters of the Jordan River came in, and there was a set of caves, I'm sure much much larger than these caves. Now, there was a series of caves there that they practiced their Pan worship. Part of Pan worship involved human sacrifice. It also involved, well, things that we're not going to talk about here on this channel, but just if you could, don't imagine, because it was some really nasty stuff in the area of sexuality and their worship of fertility and their worship of Pan. That's where it happened. It was right there. Years and years later, the Romans took over the area, and Herod the Great was the head of that district, and he built a big temple there where they still did Pan worship, but the temple was also primarily in honor of Caesar Augustus, so there was Caesar worship. Are you following me? They've gone from worshiping a golden calf to Baal worship to immorality worship to Greek god and goddesses worship, and now the Romans have it, and they're worshiping Caesar. Herod the Great's son Philip took over, and he built another temple there after changing the name of the city from Dan to Caesarea Philippi in honor of himself. And he built another temple that was in honor and for the worship of the Roman god Jupiter, which better known as Zeus. All right, so the hundreds and hundreds of years of pagan worship have taken place here. In these big caves, they would have had little areas hollowed out, probably the size of this little cave, and in little areas they would have had idols, monuments, statues, different things representing the different gods. Just a pantheon of gods. And so I can imagine Jesus and his disciples having a picnic lunch or whatever it was they were doing, and they had probably been talking about, well, that one represents them and that one represents her, and then Jesus said, well, who do people say I am? He said the Son of Man, but that was his favorite expression for himself. Who do people say that I am? And then he said, who do you say that I am? There's my first life lesson. Y'all, to me, it really doesn't matter what other people say. It totally matters what I think about God. The life lesson there is that Christianity, true Christianity, is all about a relationship. And so if I don't have a relationship, it doesn't matter what the theology books say or what other people say or churches say. The only thing that matters is who God is to me. And so who do you say that I am? It's a personal relationship. At least that's the way I see Christianity. And then Simon saying, you're the Christ. That was their word for Messiah, the long-awaited return of God to earth. You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. That was his way of saying you're God. You're God come to earth. For him to say that, it may have been a tongue-in-cheek slam against all of the things they were seeing. You're the son of the living God. All of these are dead gods. All of these are make-believe little g gods. Y'all, all around us, there are little g gods everywhere. And people worship those things. I mean, sincerely worship little g gods. But the life lesson for me is that, and again, I'll probably be called intolerant or xenophobic or something. But the clear life lesson is that I can take confidence in the fact that I'm worshiping the one and only true living God. Peter said, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then Jesus' statement, well, it's upon that hard-headed, dogmatic, convicted statement of belief. It's upon that I build my church. And the gates of Hades, y'all, that's what the Greeks called that place. They thought it was the entrance to the underworld. The gates of Hades will not prevail against it. In other words, as a Christian, the life lesson is I'm on the winning team. There is evil and paganism and isms and false gods and little g gods all around me. And sometimes they look like they're winning. But he said, the gates of Hades, all of this, none of this is going to prevail against the one and only true God. Boy, I'm so glad I can kind of rest, even when things look terrible, I can rest in the idea that I'm on the winning team. I hope and pray that you're on the winning team. That's something we got to decide for ourselves. Personal relationship, a living God, serving Him and serving Him victoriously. Well, next time we'll find another beautiful place here in Western North Carolina, or maybe somewhere else to enjoy Truth from the Trail. If you get a chance to come out to Jump Off Rock right outside of Hendersonville, North Carolina, I hope you'll do it, and I hope to see you next time on Truth from the Trail.